Today we are going to be turning this photo into this. And yes, it is a dramatic difference, but we are going to be going over the equipment that I use and the Photoshop editing that I did to it to turn it into this incredible looking edit. And yes, we do correct the white balance in post. My name is Will, welcome back to the channel. Like I mentioned in the beginning, I'm going to be editing this photo and showing you exactly step-by-step what I did in Photoshop to create this beautiful edit. Now, equipment-wise, it was very simple. I used a Godox AD200 flash within a 68 centimeter parabolic modifier on camera left. This was shot not in a studio or anything like that. It was actually shot in the back of a hair studio. Hairstylist studio. So we just used this really nice wall as the backdrop, found this chair, some flowers, and put it all together. And that was it. It was really, really simple. But let's get into Lightroom and get started with the edit. So here is the raw image as is. And the first thing we're going to do is simply we're going to crop it. So R on the keyboard, 4x5, we're just going to crop it in to get the framing right. I want her slightly off to the right on the right side of the third rule of thirds, and that gives me the framing that I want. The first thing I'm going to actually do is change this to Adobe Portrait, and then we're going to use the eyedropper tool to see if we can get the white balance right, but that doesn't look too good for me, so we're just going to manually adjust it. And I'm going to just simply lower it a little bit and raise the magenta a little bit. There we go. See, that looks way better to me. And then for the tone, all we're going to do is up the contrast just a shade. We're going to drop the highlights, raise the shadows, and set whites and blacks. Nothing crazy, just a little bit to kind of get our details back. And we're going to lower the clarity about 14, 13, something like that. I'm actually going to raise the exposure just a shade. There we go. Now, and with that being done, we're going to go into Photoshop. Go to Edit In and Edit in Photoshop. Now that we are in Photoshop, let's get started. First thing we're going to do, select the background, go ahead and press Command J to create a background copy. This is just so we always have a backup. We're going to zoom in here, press Z on the keyboard, and we're just going to remove that. Really, really simple. Good. And now we're going to zoom in a little bit more to her face, and we're going to do a little blemish control. So just press J on the keyboard, and we're just going to touch up any little blemishes that we see. Luckily, the makeup artist was really good, so they did a great job cleaning up. Oops, let's fix that. Cleaning up pretty much anything that we needed to work, so this makes editing a lot easier, in my opinion. All right, that looks pretty good. Here we go. Zoom out, and good. So that's all we're going to do with that. Now we're going to do a little bit of airbrushing. So we're going to kind of even the colors of the skin. So come down here, we're going to create a new layer. Press B on the keyboard for the brush tool. And we're going to put the opacity at about 7. Now the quick way to do this, so we're going to sample the color. So with the brush tool selected, push and hold Alt Option gives you the sample color. Click that, and we're just going to lightly paint. Remember, 7% opacity, so we're doing very little over the skin to kind of even out the colors and get rid of the hot spots from the light, which was pretty feathered, but still, just in case. Now make sure you take new samples when you go to new areas. That way the colors match and you don't get weird colors in different areas. And this shouldn't take too long because, again, makeup artist did a great job. So we are just kind of fixing up where the light caught. Okay, good. Excellent. So here's the before and after. Just kind of smooths out the skin and makes it look a little even. Now the next thing we're going to do is a little bit of dodging and burning. Now I have an action here, and we're just going to play that, and it creates our dodge and burn. All this is a burn layer inverted, which is just darkening a curves layer, and same with the dodge. It's a brightening curves layer. Super simple to make. So we'll take the dodge layer here because it's inverted. So zoom in. Get the brush tool, again, 7% with white as the foreground here. And we're just going to brighten up kind of the dark areas like this. So we're just going to do this, and we're not going to do too much, just to kind of bring back some of that shadow That way it doesn't look too ridgy, I guess you could say. We want it to be smooth. And this is a good way to keep the texture of the skin, but still get kind of smoother lines to make it look nicer. All right, so I'm going to speed this up, go through it, but primarily just going to do this right here. Okay, now we are done with the dodge and burn. So here is the before. Let me just show you really quick. Before and after. Before and after. So it just really gets some of those dark shadows that makes the skin kind of not as smooth as it should be. Now what we're going to do is we're going to create a combined layer of all the bottom layers. So on a Mac, it's Shift, Command, Option, E, and that creates this layer. And now we're going to rename this because we're going to do our sharpening. But we're going to rename it Sharpen, which I have an action that you can download for free, link in the description. But what first we're going to do is apply the neural filter. Now this is kind of the easy way of softening skin I found. I think it works pretty well. Go up to neural filters, and we're just going to turn on skin smoothing. And this does a pretty good job of smoothing the skin, and you can adjust it as needed. But here's the before, here's the after. I think that looks just fine. So we'll press OK, and there we go. Now with the sharpening layer selected, now the reason I renamed it Sharpen is because that's how it works with my action. We're going to go to Sharpen and press play, and this will give us our sharpening action. Now with the sharpening action, we're going to use the brush tool here. Let's go ahead and make this smaller, opacity at 100, and white as the 4 layer here. And we're just going to paint this on her eyes, her nose, and right here on the mouth. Just that is where the sharpening should be. And we're going to set it to 70% here. So it's not a full application, it's just a little bit, but it does make those eyes pop quite a bit. Now the next thing we're going to do is we're going to put that style on it. So you see how it's very orange in the background? We're going to change that. So the first thing we're going to do is again create a combined layer. So Shift, Command, Option, E. Then we're going to press W on the keyboard for Select Subject and press Select Subject. Now this is going to give us a pretty good selection, but we're going to come in here and refine it using the lasso tool, press Shift to add to the selection, and just kind of refine this as best as we can. It doesn't have to be perfect, but the better it is, the better it'll turn out in the long run. So we want to get the hair here. Good. We can leave that. That's fine. We can take out the chair. Oh God, that was a terrible selection. Again, I'm sure there's an easier way to do this, but I'm sure someone who's really good at Photoshop will comment and let me know, oh, you should have done this. Good, so that is good enough. All right, so now we're going to right click on it, select inverse, and then we're going to press Command J. This will give us a copy of the background. Now with this, we're going to do 2 different adjustments. The first one is going to be color balance. And what we're going to do is in the midtones, we're going to adjust all 3. The cyan, we're going to adjust to about -8 or 9. The magenta, we're going to do -1 or 2, just a little bit. And then the yellow blue, we're going to do +10. So that gives us that nice color right there. And we're going to click this button here, which applies this adjustment just to the layer below. So you'll notice it doesn't affect her at all, just the background layer, which is what we wanted. Now the next adjustment we're going to do is we're going to go here to a curves adjustment, and we're going to make a slight tweak in the curves. Nothing crazy, slight down here, slight up here. Make that down, perfect. And again, we're going to click this button here. Now we're going to take these 3, select all 3, and press Command G to group them and rename them BG or background. So that adjusts our background so it looks really, really clean. So again, Shift, Option, Command E, and then we're going to convert this into a smart object. So go up here to Filter, Convert for Smart Objects. And what this is doing is we can make adjustments, and then those adjustments will be able to be adjustable, rather than if it wasn't a smart object, then we wouldn't be able to adjust them once we made them. I hope that made sense. So the first thing we're going to do is go into Liquify. We're going to just kind of tone up her face just a little bit. So let's zoom in. We're going to do just a couple of tweaks. So down here, you'll notice face shape. So we're just going to kind of adjust this just a little, bring this up a little, bring the jawline in and the face width just a shade, not too much. Then we're going to use the push tool here, the forward warp tool. This allows us to kind of push areas of the face or image, whatever we want. And we're just going to bring this in a little bit just to kind of shape the face just a shade so it's not as pronounced. There we go. So here's the before and after. It just kind of forms it a little bit more. And now that that's done, we are going to go into Camera Raw filter. And this is kind of like Lightroom. You know, if you edit in Lightroom, this is kind of what we're doing here. And what we're going to do is go to the masks. We're going to select subject. We're going to cool her down a little. There we go. And brighten her up. Then we're going to duplicate and invert, which is going to give us the background. We're going to darken this down. We're going to create a radial filter here. And because the light you see is coming from the top left corner here, we're going to kind of cross the radial just like that. We're going to brighten it up. And then we're going to duplicate and invert this one. And we're going to darken it down to add kind of a vignette. So the light's kind of crossing through. And finally, we're going to create a linear gradient, raise it up from there, and just darken that down. So here's the before, here's the after. This just brings the attention more from the outside of the image into her. Once done, press OK. Now, since we did a smart filter, you can come here and you can see there's our Camera Raw filter, there's our liquify, there's our adjustments, so we can then tweak them if needed. And the final thing we're going to do is a little bit of contouring on her face. So that's going to be another dodge and burn action. So scroll, let's go to our actions here. Let's go to our dodge and burn. Let's go ahead and play this. And what we're going to do is simply contour the image. So basically we're going to brighten up her cheeks. I'm going to use 7% here. We're just going to brighten up where things should be bright and darken where things should be dark. So let's see. So this should be brighter, right? Good. And this doesn't have to be much. It's just a little bit. Just like that. The nose. Good. And then we'll darken around everything just to kind of contour a little bit. So we'll go ahead and speed this up to get this done. This just requires a little bit of kind of practice and figuring out what looks good and going too far a lot of the times and then bringing it back so you know exactly what to do. All right, and there we have it. So let's press Command 0 to zoom out, and here we go. Here is the before and after. We also did a little bit on the clothes here. That way you can see kind of just a little bit of contouring on the clothes. Again, all I did was really darken the darks and brighten the brights to make it really, really simple. All right, and then the final thing we're going to do is we're going to create a curves adjustment layer and just brighten up the whole image a little bit, darken the shadows just a shade, put some contrast in there, and let's go down a little bit. You don't need too much because we don't want to accentuate that too much. And I think we're actually going to lower the opacity of the dodge and burn to about 60% because it looks a little too much. There we go. And there we have it. Here is the before and after.
So just as a quick note, I added a little bit of extra contrast in this image a little bit later. That's why the audio changed, because I'm filming this separately. But what I did was I copied the entire image and I separated the background and the subject. So here, if you see, I have the background layer here, and I applied on the background layer a curves adjustment. Now this curves adjustment was just darkening things down, and you can see I masked this part here to give a little bit more light to get some separation to the background. Then I use this here is the subject layer. So I use this so that curves isn't affecting her. And I applied a couple of adjustments to her to increase contrast. The first one I did was just a little bit of a curves adjustment to increase the shadows and increase the midtones a little bit. Then I also did another curves adjustment, which was just brightening things up. So with this adjustment layer here, I added a lot more contrast to the image, and this is the before and this is the after.
And that is all there is to it. It is a lot. So take your time, watch this video over and over again to learn these techniques. This is a lot of trial and error on my part. I didn't learn this in 2 seconds. It took some time. It took a lot of practicing. So don't get frustrated if you start getting frustrated, or try not to get frustrated, I should say, because Photoshop's a pain in the ass. Let's be real. But that's it for this video. So go ahead and hit the like button, subscribe if you haven't already. If you have any questions, you know where to find me. But again, take your time, and there's tons of other ways to do these kind of things. So this is just the way I do it. Maybe it's the long way, maybe it's the short way, who knows. But I hope you learned something. I'll see you guys next week.